Hello, and welcome to the origin of the Clefs. I know what you're thinking, why has nobody taught me the origin of the Clefs before? I feel just the same. So, our music history goes back continuously for a little under 2,000 years. Prior to that, the Romans, the Greeks, their history of music doesn't flow naturally into ours. We don't really know that much about their music. But once the church was established, then that musical tradition has continued really uninterrupted to today. And so, why are there clefs? What about the whole staves thing? Where did this all come from? Well, if you can imagine sort of 1,500 years ago, in the church, you had a whole bunch of people who wanted to sing. And so how did they do that? Well, originally what happened, they would write down scriptures from the Bible and they would send those around to other churches, but it didn't really say how to sing. It could say, these are the words we sing, but you couldn't actually say, sing this note. And so then what they devised is a system where you get all the words written out with little squiggles above them, sort of saying, go up at this bit, go down here, sing the same note here. Again, it wasn't really very useful. So then what they decided was they needed a really set system so that you could send your music from one church to another and people would understand it. And so they developed this system of writing on lines and spaces. Where did that come from? Why would you come up with that? Well, around the same time as they were wrestling with this problem, they were actually developing a system for people to sing who couldn't read. Because you have to think, 1,500 years ago, most people couldn't read. And so they developed this system where you could just use your hand. And so you hold your hand, and young boys would hold their hand in this position for some strange reason. I don't know why. And they would actually use their fingers and the spaces between their fingers as a way of memorizing a tune. So you might have, Mary had a little lamb, little lamb, little lamb. Mary had a little lamb whose fleece was white as snow. And so by knowing which note corresponded to which finger and which gap between the fingers, you could actually memorize a tune. So then, when they went to write out music, they thought, well, there's this system that's already in place that, these young boys know how to do this, where they go, Mary had a little lamb. And they just adapted that into their writing. And so if you imagine, Mary had a little lamb, if you just wrote that on a line and a space between the line and another line, it would just be a mess. So they kind of turned it into a timeline. So you have, Mary had a little lamb. And so you get line, space, line, space, line, line, line. And so you have these 5 lines corresponding to the 5 fingers. And in between those are the 4 spaces between the fingers. And that's really how musical notation started as we know it. Quickly it was realized that you needed to have some sort of way of saying, well, what note do you start on? And logically what they did was they said this finger, which is called the index finger, the index finger is the index of what key you're in, or what note you're starting on. And so this, it was decided, do you guys remember what the treble clef's also called? It's also called the G clef. So this was G. And so your pointer finger pointed at the main note that you were starting on, or that was the most important note to kind of gather your bearings. So that note is G. Now, young singers in the early church weren't known as young singers. They were all boys. Only boys and men sang in the early church. And they were known as trebles. And the word clef is the French for key. And all the key means is you have all these little black dots. How do you know which one's which? And so the treble clef is the key for determining which note if you're a young boy singer. Treble clef. Now, interestingly, just as a kind of side note, we don't need to know this for a while, but the men held their hands like this, and this was their index finger, And so this was the clef, the key, for the basses. And so this one was the bass clef, and that's the note F. So you have the treble clef and the bass clef on top of each other. And that's really been the basis of our music writing for, over 1,500 years. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Hey, see you next time.